live, and then I have to get Instagram to like play along with us here. Oh, it's thinking about it. Oh, how odd. There we go. Okay, so here we are. Hi, welcome to Reading Between the Lines. I'm Sara.
And I'm Nicole.
Okay, and we are here to chat all things books. But before we start, I have a few little updates that I'm really excited that I didn't tell my mom about yet, so I'll share that. The first one is I am really excited because I'll be able to be interviewing at the end of this month Andrew DeYoung. He's an author who has a book that's out right now. It's a thriller. It's called The Day He Never Came Home, and you can find this book out right now in like Barnes and Noble and wherever else you get books. And it's a really fantastic thriller. So very, very excited. He is also published by Poisoned Pen Press. So if you're not familiar with that publisher, they do, mysteries, thrillers, all that kind of genre. They have a lot of great authors that they support. So excited to talk to Andrew. And then the second thing is that I've asked my friend Tomoko if she will help us to draw like a new logo that features you and me and Aaron. And so we'll see how that goes. Yeah,
That's
she's working on some drafts. She is a professional illustrator in Tokyo. So yeah, fun stuff. Okay.
How exciting. How did you meet the author that you are going to be hosting?
I just discovered Andrew recently on Instagram. He's heavily promoting his book. He's been doing lots of book signings. And so I was just I was thrilled. He actually had this adorable video where he's driving with his daughter in the car to go to Barnes and Noble to sign books. And I thought it was pretty cute. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
And he said yes. That's exciting.
Yes, he very graciously said yes. So that was wonderful. I asked if I could share him with our audience. So
that's wonderful.
All right, so let's talk about what we've been reading for July, and then we're going to go into talking about the books that we are very eagerly anticipating for the fall, like fall releases. And I really want to talk about that right now, but we'll just do one thing at a time. So why don't you start?
Well, I don't know if you remember in the last podcast, I predicted that although the first half of my reading for 2024 had been pretty good, that I was anticipating that the second half of the year was going to be even better. And I'm happy to report I started out with 2 5-star books already.
Okay. Tell me about them.
Okay, so the first book I'm going to share was a 4-star read, and it's kind of a leftover from my lighter reading choices that I was drawn to during the summer. And I think a lot of listeners will get a kick out of this irreverent family drama. Let me just tell you about the book. It's called Jackpot Summer by Elyssa Friedman, published in June 2024 by Berkely. The 4 Jacobson kids were always taught to appreciate the value of $1. However, now as adults, they each find themselves in big trouble, both financially and in their personal lives. They reunite one summer at the family beach house where they're helping their recently widowed father pack things up in order to sell their family beach house. And when the youngest brother, Noah, sees an ad for a big Powerball jackpot, he persuades his siblings to chip in with him and buy a ticket. Who knows? If they win, it could change their lives, and wonders never cease. Guess what? They have the winning ticket. So they win millions of dollars, but they fall into the classic lottery winners cliche of just spending money hand over fist and not really making good choices. I mean, they're just squandering money, ridiculously expensive. So they fall into this syndrome of buying shiny new toys when in actual fact, they would have all benefited more from turning to one another for counsel and support. And I love a book where there's some kind of growth in the character by the end of the book,
Yeah.
to redeem their poor choices, and this book, really delivers in that area. And if you like to laugh out loud, and if you love books about family dynamics and rich people behaving badly, this one could really be for you. I think it would be a great book to take on a summer vacation. And
How,
I gave this one 4 stars. And the author also wrote a book a year or 2 ago called The
yeah,
Last Supper at the Golden Hotel.
I remember reading
It
that
was
one. I didn't
terrible.
realize it was the same author. Okay.
It was, and I didn't care for her first book particularly at all, but this one just really hit a sweet spot. I grew up in a family with a lot of siblings, and some of us made good choices, some of us didn't, and it was just interesting to see another family who had a family beach house, who had this
Mm.
stroke of good luck, and actually didn't do the very best with it.
I am more intrigued to read this because I kind of forgot that like we very much as a family could relate because we did our my grandparents had a beach house. Oh, now where does this take place and also what format of book? How did you read this?
I read a physical copy, and the the beach house is in it's on the East Coast, in
Mhm.
Sort of New Englandy area. The
Okay.
father is, the recently widowed father, who's been always very conservative with his money and is very appalled by the choices his adult children are making when they win this
Yeah.
lottery. He's moving to Florida,
Well, there you
and,
go. Okay.
he's starting life anew.
Okay. So that's fantastic. So again, that was Jackpot Summer by Elyssa
That's
Friedman. Cool.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, all right. The one that so I just have to jump right into this one because you know that from your recommendation, I read this book. This is Margot's Got Money Troubles,
Yeah.
and it was published by William Morrow, June of 2024. This is by Rufi Thorpe. I read this as a hardback from the Book of the Month Club. And I'll just start out by saying before I describe what this book is about, I had a lot of prejudice against it. I thought that there were specific topics or tropes here that I am completely uninterested in. And when this book was featured for Book of the Month, I was extremely disappointed in Book of the Month and slightly appalled, honestly.
I
Um,
remember mentioning it to you, and you rolled your eyes and said, "Oh, I don't think so."
God, no. This is a book about a young girl making frightfully bad choices, and we delve into the world of professional wrestling. We talk about the website OnlyFans, which is known for not all, I mean, it's not exclusively about this, but it is known for its adult content. I was so very wrong about this book, and I'm really glad that you recommended it. So here we go. And thank you for not talking about it yet because I really wanted to. So I know that you've read it. So Margot's Got Money Troubles. This is very bold. It's described as a laugh out loud book. However, I find it humorous, but there was a lot of sad parts. So this is not a comedy funny book. It's very heartwarming. Margot is a young woman who's navigating adulthood. She's 20 years old. She's a new mother. She has a lot of financial struggles. She is the daughter of a former Hooters waitress and an ex pro wrestler who is a celebrity. And Margot's just got to fend for herself. So she's had an affair with her English professor and had an unplanned pregnancy, which she chose to keep the child. And her father does step in to offer childcare. So Margot devises a plan to start an OnlyFans account, and she applies wrestling advice from her dad to create a persona online for herself. So there's a lot of marketing. Again, with my background, I love that. A lot of marketing, a lot of compelling character creation from the author. This is a really nice story about self empowerment, taking control of your own narrative, like you controlling the story of how other people perceive you. And it was very well written. Again, a roller coaster of life, ups and downs. It was um, there was a lot of research that I applaud the author for going into. A lot of research about wrestling, about OnlyFans, about the state of California custody laws and cases. Tons of plot twists that Margot did not see coming, and neither did I, because I was just very much like Margot, where I so trusted and wanted to believe in the goodness of others, and they let her down. One thing I didn't care for about this book, and you'll have to tell me what you thought about that, the narrative jumps around from first person to third person, with Margot being the narrator telling you about her life, and then it switches to Margot in third person. That was weird. However, it didn't detract any stars. I gave it 5 stars because I loved it.
Well, I really enjoyed this book too, and it was different. I can't say I've ever read anything quite like it. The the narrative jumping from the point of view was a little confusing. I didn't care for it. It didn't ruin the book for me by any means. I think what struck me most about this book was, I mean, Margot, was she even 21? Wasn't she just 20 years
No,
old?
she's 20 years old. She couldn't even legally drink alcohol.
And she's got this infant that she's decided the right thing to do is to keep her child. And the feeling of helplessness that she must have felt is, how in the world is she going to support herself and this child? And just being in that situation, I can't even imagine the panic that a young mother would feel. And she came up with this questionable but innovative and ultimately successful way of making enough money to support herself. And some of those OnlyFans people, they make a lot of money with their
They
content.
do. I was not annoyed by her choices because otherwise we wouldn't have a plot. I get that. But also, the choices she made, she really was left between a rock and a hard place. She had no other choice, you know? So it was like,
She couldn't go leave the child. She
you
had
know,
to work from
be
home.
homeless or, yeah. What else was I going to say?
You know, they're making a Netflix movie out of this.
About this?
Yeah, Margot's got money troubles, and they've already
Get out.
They've cast who's going to be Margot, and the other woman that she befriends, who also has a very successful OnlyFriends site. I would say she's going to be portrayed by Nicole Kidman.
Surely Nicole Kidman's going to be her mom. She's more anyway. Well, we'll have to look this up. But
maybe, yeah. Look at it. I'm sorry, I don't remember the details.
Well, maybe you're right. I pictured Michelle Pfeiffer as Margot's mother the entire time throughout this book, and then I pictured, for some reason, not like Hulk Hogan, but that bounty hunter dude, dog.
I
don't
totally
know what his
pictured
name is.
Hulk Hogan as Jinx, her father.
Yeah. It's so.
Who has struggles of his own, which are handled very well.
Let's talk about that just for a second, because he was a fantastic character, and somebody who also was making extremely poor choices that really are deplorable, and yet you still like the guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, the author is really quite talented to make you embrace and love all of these very flawed people. And yes, to speak to your point about the last book that you were talking about, like enjoying a book when there's character growth, I enjoyed that Margot did have character growth. She was still making choices that I would not make for myself, but I respected them, and she had stepped into her own power. So she was really in control of her life by the end of the book. So anyway, okay, your turn.
Okay, the next book was one of the 5-star books that I'm going to talk about today. And this book is Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo, published June 2024 by Doubleday. This really popular author, the book is a family drama by the author who wrote The Most Fun We Ever Had, which I also read and really enjoyed. But this book in particular has risen to the top of my list for best book of the year. It just really resonated with me for a lot of reasons, but we meet our main character, Julia Ames, who's 57 years old, and she's finding herself living an improbably happy life. She has a long-term marriage to the most understanding husband, 2 grown children, and a prosperous life in the suburbs. And as the book opens, Julia has gone to a gourmet grocery store to buy some special food for her husband's birthday party. And when at this grocery store, she runs into her former friend, Helen, after more than 20 years of being estranged. And they have an extremely uncomfortable conversation at the grocery store. And we are left wondering what caused their friendship to come to a screeching halt. And we just want to know more right away. And the book tells the story of Julia's life, starting from her troubled childhood to her very fortunate marriage, young motherhood, which she struggles with. She had a lot of trouble with postpartum depression. And this friendship that was with Helen, that was both her lifeline at the time when she was struggling as a new mother, and it was also nearly the ruination of her marriage and her family. Julia is a really complicated character. She's always felt that she didn't fit in, and her self-sabotaging choices jeopardized her marriage, her role as a mother, and her closest relationships. Her own parenting, her own experience of being a child to a really problematic parent contributes totally. You meet her mother and you can say, oh yeah, I see why she turned out that way. But we follow Julia over the course of decades in this really poignant story of second chances and the cast of characters who stand by and see her through her life. The book does go back and forth in time. We learn about about Julia's childhood, about her college years, about meeting her husband, and especially we learn about her trials as being a new mother and how difficult that was for her to kind of find her place in that new role. Lombardo creates an extremely realistic cast of characters, and she examines a life that Julia's life was really relatable. I mean, it really seemed all too real at times. And it's an in-depth study of relationships and how they begin and sometimes end. And you know there are people who've been really close to you at various stages of your life, and they kind of fall by the wayside as you move on, but they were there for you at the time and were important. And then there are the other people in your life who stand by through thick and thin from start to finish and never let you down. So the book and its characters deeply resonated with me, and I know I'm going to be thinking about them for a long time. And honestly, if I finish a book and I'm crying 5 minutes after I'm reading it, it's really touched me. So I hope this book's getting a lot of hype right now, and I think it deserves it. It's really, really good. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. And this was a hardback, you
I
said?
read a physical copy of this book also. In fact, all of the books that I read were physical copies this time.
Okay.
I've been kind of bombing my Kindle choices. I'll have to talk about that at another
I know.
time.
I was gonna say, why no Kindle books? That's okay. I don't read on Kindle very often. So
part of the problem is I've picked some huge long books.
Yeah.
And I'll just jump in and say the one that really I found problematic is a book called Familiaris by the author who wrote the story of Edgar Sawtelle, which was a book that I read maybe 10, 15 years ago, and it was excellent. It's Oprah's book pick for the summer. This book is like 1,000 pages long, and I'm counting it as a book that I read because I stopped about 500 pages into it. This author just kept going off on tangents. It just tell the story. It was a prequel to Edgar Sawtelle, and about a young man and his wife who bought a ranch or a farm, and with a ragtag cast of characters, started this dynasty of raising amazing dogs. And I wanted to hear about that story, but he got off on all these philosophical tangents. Familiaris. The
Mhm.
author's name is kind of unpronounceable. It's like Wrobelewski.
Let me
It
look
just
it up.
didn't do it for me. And I have that on my Kindle, and I spent a lot of hours reading that thing, and it just was like going nowhere. So
Oh
I
yeah,
quit.
David Wroblewski, WrobleWski. Okay. Well, now, okay, it's my turn. So I'll just get into that.
Your turn.
I had a whole bunch of thoughts and segues, but I will keep to the course for right now. The next book that I read recently was The Familiar, and this is by Leigh Bardugo. I don't know if I'm saying her name right.
I
But there
think
we
you
go.
are. Actually, I've heard other podcasters mention it, and that's how they say it.
Okay. April 9th, 2024. This was published by Flatiron Books. This was a hardback from Book of the Month. So Leigh tends to write adult fiction, but also YA. I am really not able to embrace the YA. She read Six of Crows, wasn't it? And I think you enjoyed that. I could not get behind that.
No, I started it, but I didn't finish it
Oh,
either.
Okay. Yeah, she had great characters, but I just like, I don't know. It was YA. Anyway, this book is not YA. This is a historical fantasy, and it's set in the late 16th century in Madrid, and it touches on Jewish and Spanish history. So if those are topics of interest for you, I'm very, very interested in Spanish culture and history right now. So this was right up my alley. So in The Familiar, Luzia is a maid. She's a scullion, and she uses scraps of magic to get through her very, very tough days. And she has an extremely hard life. She sleeps in a pantry on a stone floor. You know, it's pretty crummy. So she lives in a very shabby household in Madrid, and when her scheming mistress of the house discovers Luzia's talent for small miracles, she demands that Luzia use her gifts to improve the family's social standing. So this amusement for the bored nobility turns very dangerous when Luzia catches the attention of Antonio Perez. He is the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. Perez sees Luzia as a way to regain the king's favor amidst this war against England. Determined to seize her chance to improve her fortunes, and also the attention is very nice that she's getting, Luzia dives into a world filled with seers and alchemists and holy men and con artists, where magic and science and fraud all intermingle. Her fame begins to grow, but so does the risk of her Jewish heritage being found out during the Inquisition's wrath. So I really enjoyed Leigh's Hellbent series, which is a dark academia novel. This particular book, The Familiar, being historical fantasy, is very different, I think, for Leigh. My problem was, say it again?
Standalone?
This is a standalone. Yeah, this is not part of a series, standalone. There's a bit of a romance here. None of the characters are particularly likable. So it was a little hard for me to speed through this with enjoyment. However, if you're really into historical accuracy, political intrigue, this was extremely well done. I would absolutely recommend it. I don't care for hard fantasy where you have to learn about magic systems and there's a million characters. So this is not at all like that, despite that there is magic involved. We don't go overboard in trying to explain it. It just is, and we move on with the plot. So I gave it 3 stars, but I'm a hard grader. So
I have a question about YA and authors who write both YA and adult. What's the difference that puts you off the YA and that makes you enjoy their adult novels?
For me, in terms of Leigh's writing, because there are other YA authors who I really enjoy and will purchase their books all the time. In Leigh's case, there's too much romantic angst, and I'm just too old for that now. I'm just not interested in does he like me? I don't know. Oh, he's so handsome. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore. So
that's miscommunications that happen between younger people who just don't talk, they don't communicate.
Exactly. So that's for me in terms of Leigh's books. That's not, I can't do it. But her adult fiction is, there's really none of that silliness. It's also darker. It's more adult. There's different, more darker themes, and I appreciate that. So yeah,
Interesting. Good.
what
All
you
right,
got next?
my next book, another 5-star book. This one is also getting a lot of hype this summer. I think it's well deserved. This author is Liz Moore. Her current book is The God of the Woods, and it was published July 2024 by Riverhead Books. This author is incredible. Yes, it's a beautiful, beautiful cover. The description, it's set in the Adirondack, and most of the book is set in 1975. And her description of the woods, of the forest, it's so well done. This author does so many things that are really well done. And the plot of this book is rather complicated. It jumps around in different timelines. But the author has made it so easy for the reader to understand exactly where they are, who is speaking. Underneath every chapter head, open up the book and look at the start of any chapter and hold it up. And you can see.
I don't know if it'll because I've got my background blur, but let me get. Oh yeah, okay. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this.
Well, under the chapter heading, it'll say who's speaking. Say Carl. It's from Carl's point of view, and you can see there's a line right at the top of the text that tells you it's 1975, and it's the third day of this mystery that we're following. The third day since the main catalyst.
Yeah, Alice, 1950s. I get it. Oh, and I see that like all of the years that we cover are listed here, but in bold, it's for Alice on page whatever this is. We're in the 1950s. That's extremely smart.
So helpful. Okay. And I've never seen an author do that when they have multiple timelines. And anyway, it was brilliant. And I always knew exactly who was talking, where we were, and what was happening. So I don't want to give too many details about the complex.
I want to read this.
Oh, it was so well done. Anyway, I'm going to give you just the briefest description of what the book is about. So one morning in 1975, a camp counselor discovers that one of the campers that she is supervising has gone missing. And the camper that's missing is not just any camper. She is the daughter of the very wealthy family who owns the camp and this vast property that the camp is located on.
Yeah.
And to make things even more interesting, 16 years prior to Barbara going missing from her camp cot, her brother disappeared and was never found. And so this is just unthinkable that two children in this very wealthy family, the Van Laars, would
what is happening here?
Disappear. And the plot slowly unfolds, and the lives of the main characters all intersect, and they ultimately come together in very profound ways. The characterizations in the book explore motherhood, gender roles, sexuality, class, for sure. For example, there is the part of the book that's set in 1975 when Barbara goes missing. A young detective who's female, her name is Judith, she's on the team who's investigating the case. And it turns out in 1975 in New York, that was the first year that women were brought in to an inspector level detective. Before that, there might have been some women on the police force, but no women were in higher ranks. And the misogyny and the treatment that this young woman got, I mean, not only is she female, but she's youngish, in her mid-20s. I mean, they give her, her teammates, the male teammates, give her menial tasks. And I mean, she's an inspector. That is a pretty high level in the scheme of police work. And she just struggled constantly to be heard and to be allowed to participate in a meaningful way in this investigation. And she had some really good ideas. I read one review, and the person just said, I always thought I would have made a really good detective, but after reading this book, I would have been demoted to traffic in a heartbeat. But anyway, the author, Liz Moore, is extremely skilled, and she just magically transports the reader to these different times and places. And I had several ideas on how this book might end, how it might be resolved. And I was wrong every single time. I was just totally flabbergasted by the way this book ended, and I didn't see it coming. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the author and her backlist. The first book I read by Liz Moore was a book called Heft, and it's the story of Arthur Ott, who's a 500-pound man who hasn't left his home in a decade.
Yes.
And it was similar. I was telling your father about this book, and we had recently watched a movie called Whale that actually was nominated for a award.
Brendan, the actor who won.
Fraser.
Yes,
right?
Brendan Fraser. Mm-hmm.
And the movie was very good, but I don't think it wasn't based on this book exactly. Similar concept, but the Heft was the story that Liz Moore wrote. And I've thought about that book. I've read it probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I still think about it. She also wrote Long Bright River, which was very popular a couple of years ago, and that dealt with two sisters, one of whom is a detective, and the other sister had succumbed to all of the problems with opioid addiction. And it was really well done as well. And then the third book that I had read prior to The God of the Woods was The Unseen World. And that I think I've given every single one of her books 5 stars that I've read. She's they call it an auto-buy author for me. She was fantastic.
Well, we're gonna talk about some more auto-buy authors later today.
All right, well, it's your turn to tell about your next book.
Okay,
I can't wait to hear.
So this book, I did talk about this on social media a little bit, and I just want to point out that I have not talked about any Japanese authors today. So yay!
So yeah, I'm waiting.
But this book is middle grade. So this is Olivetti, and this is about that sentient typewriter. So Olivetti, March 26th of 2024. This is by Feiwel and Friends Publishing, and the author is Allie Millington. And this is 250 pages. It's middle grade that I enjoyed in an audio book format. So I also borrowed this from the library through my Libby app, which I highly recommend. So in this book about Olivetti, he is a forgotten typewriter. He feels neglected by the Brindle family. They replaced him with a computer a few years ago. He's extremely irritated about that. The only family member who occasionally pays attention to him is 12-year-old Ernest. Though he's got his own issues. He prefers his collection of Oxford English dictionaries, and Olivetti, the magic behind Olivetti is that he remembers every single word that's been typed on him. And he kind of feels like he's been keeping these memories alive. So when Beatrice, who is Ernest's mother, and Olivetti's former frequent user, drops him off at a pawn shop and mysteriously disappears, Olivetti decides to break the typewriter code and communicate with Ernest. He shares the memories stored inside of him that his mother wrote to help him find Beatrice. So their search takes them across San Francisco. They uncover lots of clues, and they really face this family's unsolved past. The unsolved past is referred to as the everything that happened, which we don't really know about until like more than halfway through. This book reads more adult for me. And if you have a very mature reader, in like middle grade reader or teenager, I would say that's more in their line. You know, my child is 12. I don't think this would hold her interest. It's just a little too, it's a good mystery, but anyway, it's just a bit more mature than I think she would be ready for. From the beginning, though, I was, as an adult, was hooked with the mystery. Why is the typewriter sentient? Why did Ernest's mother run away? What on earth happened in their past to make Ernest so traumatized? He's really quite traumatized to the point where I didn't understand if he was just someone who had experienced severe trauma or if he was on the spectrum. I think the character might still be on the spectrum because he is frustratingly incapable of embracing change and adapting to change. And a negative for me, Allie, if you're listening, you're a wonderful writer. And Tom Hanks said that he loved this book. I'm just putting that out there. This book took place in San Francisco, and there was like no research done whatsoever about San Francisco,
Oh, I
and
hate
that really irritated me. So that made me a little irritated. Anyway, now the spoiler topic for this, I'm not going to say what it is. You can go onto Goodreads and look this up and see from other people's reviews with the spoilers, like what is that trigger warning. And you know, this might be a book that is something that you want to gift to a child who perhaps is experiencing this in their life right now. But if you're interested, I'll let you figure out what that is, or just be surprised and read it. The narration in this book switches back from Olivetti to Ernest. And Olivetti, the audio producers had chosen like a British actor to do this very stuffy version of Olivetti. So that added some humor to it and lightness to the heavy subject matter. And also there was a sidekick character for Ernest who was charming and delightful and so well-rounded. I would love a book just about her and her adventures. And she really stole the show for me. But all the other characters were a little less developed, even Ernest. So 3 stars for me.
That's interesting because a while back I brought The Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows to the show, and that was about magic typewriters too.
Yes. So it must be a thing. And I will read more books about magical typewriters. I think that's very fun. So
well,
all
that
right.
sounds really good. And I think I recently noticed on Goodreads that my sister Kate has read this book also. So it'd be interesting to know what her thoughts were.
Yes, I would love to know. So let's talk a little bit about our most anticipated books that are coming down the pipeline. They're not yet out. Maybe if you're lucky enough to have an advanced reader copy, but we are not. But we are still excited to talk about this. So you go first, Mom.
Now, shall we go back and forth, or shall I just tell you all of mine at once? Or
tell me all of yours, but let me interject and like pipe up with an opinion as you go.
Oh, that's a great idea. All right, it's gonna be a dialogue here.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I am really distracted by all the new and shiny books. I would love to, and I make it a goal every year to read more backlist books, but I'm so drawn to all the new ones that come out, especially if their books are by authors that are tried and true. So anyway, the first book that I'm going to mention is an author that I have really enjoyed. Do you think this is Catherine Steadman's maybe her 4th book? I want to say
it's like her 6th.
Oh my gosh. Well,
let me see.
I would bet money it's her 4th book, but prove me wrong.
Oh, I think it's the 5th one.
The 5th? Okay.
Something in the Water, The Family Game, Mr. Nobody, The Disappearing Act, and then this one.
All right, I forgot about The Disappearing Act. All right, her new book is coming out in July, at the end of the month. I think July 30th. There are some good books coming out on that day. This book is by Catherine Steadman, and it's her 5th book called Look in the Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is described as being a fast-paced, unput-downable thriller. Our main character is Nina, and she has inherited, upon her father's death, a fabulous vacation home in the British Virgin Islands. She never knew it existed, and it's making her wonder How did her father get the money to afford this property? And what else was he hiding?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
Now, I love her, but I didn't really, I didn't like her.
you didn't
I think
like
it was the
Something in
latest
the
one.
Water, the first book.
No, well, I didn't, but Something in the Water is a book that was so polarizing for me. I loved to hate it. I loved to hate this book so much that I'm going to say that I loved it because it really occupied space in my brain. I really loved Mr. Nobody that she wrote. The latest one, The Family Game, I didn't love that at all. However, it did, the main character, there's kind of a scene with like a garnet ring, and as you remember, I was like, oh, I need a garnet ring.
Oh, that's
So,
right. Is that what
right?
was
That's
behind?
yes, that book inspired me that I needed a garnet ring. So, okay. Anyway, she's
Well,
a wonderful writer, but it's been hit or miss for me.
I have to say, I don't really remember the plots of her
Yeah,
previous books. All I know is that they're really entertaining. They are fast reads. They hold my attention. And she's kind of the author is kind of a fascinating character. She's an actress as well as being an author.
yeah.
And she had a part in the Downton Abbey TV series. You'll have to look her up to see her pictures, and then she wasn't a major character, but she was very
Yeah.
good.
All
All
right,
right.
next.
For me, you want me to tell? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Do you remember me talking about Falling and Drowning, the two books by T.J. Newman? She used to be a flight attendant, and now she's
Yes,
turned author, and writes
yes.
these thrilling books about airplane disasters. Well, she's coming out with a new book. I guess she's going to be writing a book a year. She's going to run out of plots pretty soon because this one sounds pretty far-fetched. So the
Oh,
basic
okay.
plot of this heart-stopping thriller is pilot suffers heart attack at 35,000 feet and plane crashes into a nuclear power plant.
Come on.
How will a brave few save not just their community, but the fate of all humanity?
Oh gosh. I don't know about that one.
I'll be interested to see if she pulls this one off because that sounds like what? But her
Yeah.
other two books, Falling and Drowning, were absolutely amazing. Like, you don't bother me. You just put a sign on the door saying, no phone calls, no interruptions. I'm reading this book. So
Oh my
we'll
God.
see.
Okay. What else you
Okay,
got?
then I've got two more.
Okay.
Um, the next one is Here One Moment by Leanne Moriarty. It's coming out in September. Oh, I forgot to mention the Worst Case Scenario that by TJ Newman. That's coming out in August. So
Okay.
we have to wait for September for Leanne Moriarty's new book. This author is hugely popular in Australia, and she has definitely caught on in the United States. Some of the other books that she's known for have been made into movies, like Big Little Lies, Apples
Oh
Never
yeah.
Fall. That was a recent, I think, a Netflix series, or maybe it was Prime. But anyway, that was on television not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got a very big backlist. And her books are quite different in terms of topic. Like the previous author I was talking about, T.J. Newman, she only writes about plane crashes. Leanne Moriarty writes a lot of her books have to do with family drama, but they're just widely different. She never repeats herself. So, on what seems to be like a short, ordinary flight, one passenger starts telling all the other passengers exactly how and when they will die. She proclaims herself as some kind of psychic, I guess, and she's just telling everyone around her, you're going to die then, and it might be a long time from now, or maybe you better watch out because next week you're in for it. And as time passes, it turns out her predictions were correct. And the book raises the question, if you could fight fate, change it, would you? And that is an interesting philosophical question. And As Stephen Hawking observed, even people who don't believe in fate look before they cross the road.
That's a great quote.
So anyway, I have high hopes for this. Her books are always bestsellers, really, really good books. So
This reminds me of that book that came out, I think it was last year, called The Measure.
Measure, yes, yes.
Yeah, where everyone, you get a string and you can figure out how long your life will be, but do you open the box with the string in it to know, or do you not? So that's kind
Well,
of
and
the
with the
gist of
measure,
that
I don't
one.
think people knew exactly how they would die. I mean, if
Right.
you if
It just
if you
it
were
was
told
going to be a short life.
you would die, because a train derailed, maybe you could just avoid trains and be okay. I don't know. So my
Tell me it
last
were that
book
easy.
that I'm highly anticipating, I had told you there were some Gothic books that are coming out,
Yeah.
and in August, The Third Wife of Faraday House by B.R. Myers. I don't know this author, but I've read a preview of it, and it sounds like it might be right up your alley. So our
Hmm.
main character is Emmeline, and she has a guardian who's just been trying to get her married off, and he's come up with this slew of just ghastly suitors. And she does end up marrying a widower who takes her away to his cloistered seaside manor, where she finds out that his last wife is still alive.
No, no. This reminds me of what is that? You love that book. What is the book about? Like the can't remember what it's called. Um, it's a classic. That's a
Jane
similar
Eyre. Jane
Jane
Eyre.
Eyre. Good God, thank you.
And the wife is
That
up in the attic, yeah.
it also reminds me of Mexican Gothic. I think it is. It's sort of the same story where this young lady gets married off, and then she's like living in a haunted house, and
Yeah.
there's other
All
nefarious
those
things happening.
mushrooms in that book just really put me off. Were there mushrooms growing everywhere on the walls and
Um.
Gothic?
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of a different book. She had another book. Okay, hang on, just for posterity. Hang on. That was Sylvia Moreno Garcia, who is the
Right.
author, and she writes horror,
Yeah.
but she also has one that is a similar gothic horror kind of a theme. The the Beautiful Ones. I think
Oh,
that's what I was thinking of. And I couldn't really get into that one. I did try to read it. Anyway, okay. So thank you for putting that together, because I will definitely look into The Third Wife of the Faraday House. So for me, the one that is most anticipated, and this is what I meant earlier, where I said we both do. We have authors who we love no matter what. We will buy the book. I don't care what it's about. I will buy it and I will read it and I will love it. And this is one by TJ Klune, coming out September 2024, of Somewhere Beyond the Sea. So this is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, where
which was a wonderful book.
a wonderful book, Arthur Parnassus's hope of adopting 6 magical children is threatened by a revelation from his past. This is also there's a bit of a romance here. Arthur and I don't know what the other character's name. Two gentlemen who are wanting to adopt these magical children. Also, one of children. I'm losing my ability to talk. One of the kids is actually the Antichrist, though he doesn't realize that. So
Oh,
there's a lot of. Did you realize that, like, in the first book?
I
Anyway,
don't remember. I don't remember the
okay.
details.
But these children are all very magical. There's a dwarf girl character who's absolutely adorable, and she loves gardening and all
Isn't
that
there
stuff. So,
a blob child who just can take
oh
different
yes,
shapes?
there's like a slime child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the slime child is delightful.
Yeah.
They're all delightful. There's a housekeeper who kind of keeps the whole household together, and just very loving and it's a found family, concept.
Yes.
So,
And I thought that the queer romance aspect was really sweet.
it was
loved that.
adorable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So the
that'll be a
next
good
one,
one.
I
I'll look forward to
think so
that one.
too. So the next book, I know that I need to read more literary fiction. So this is one that intrigued me, The Playground by Richard Powers. This is going to come out September 24th of 2024. 4 lives are brought together at a French Polynesian island, debating whether to allow the construction of floating cities. So that's all I know, but it sounds intriguing. And then the Hitchcock House. No, darn it. The Hitchcock Hotel by Stephanie Wrobel. Have you heard of this one yet?
I have not. I recognize the author's name though.
This is a mystery and thriller coming out September. The owner of a Hitchcock-themed hotel invites his former college film club friends to return to a reunion with deadly intentions. So, I mean, come on, that's got to be great.
Okay.
The Mistletoe Mystery by Nita Prose. She's been writing the Molly the Maid series.
Housemaid books.
Yes. Yeah. This one's going to be a Christmas novella where Molly must reevaluate who she can trust after a secret Santa exchange at work. This is not a fantastic sounding plot, but I love Nita and I love her writing. And the character of Molly the Maid is polarizing for some. This character is extremely autistic and has a lot of odd behavior, which I find charming and endearing, but it's not for everybody. And then lastly, we talked about this briefly, The City and Its Uncertain Walls by Haruki Murakami. This is, of course, Japanese author, literary fiction though, and coming out in the end of November. So he actually expands on one of his decade-old short stories and he turns it into a full-length novel about a dream reader who is grieving his lost love. Now with Murakami, you can have an explanation of what this book is about and it's not at all going to be about that. So it'll just be interesting to see where that goes. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, there are some good ones that we have to look forward to.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that really will wrap it up for us for today. So thank you all for joining us, and Mom, thank you. And next time we'll
what could be better than getting together to talk about books? My favorite thing.
I know. I love it. I did invite Eva to share a book review if she would like to for the next episode. She reads middle grade fantasy and mystery. So we'll see what she will contribute to the next one.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
So there she is. Come say hi. Oh, your hair is crazy. Okay. All right, friends. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.